Velthor stood in the observation chamber of the Galactic Council station, his 4 eyes watching the stars beyond the glass. He was an Archean, a species known across the galaxy for keeping records and staying neutral. His people did not fight wars. They watched them. They wrote about them. They remembered them when others wanted to forget. Today, he had received a new assignment. The Council wanted him to observe humanity's first real war. The humans were fighting the Krathi Empire, and everyone expected them to lose quickly. Velthor did not care who won. His job was simple: watch, record, and report. Nothing more. He touched the datapad in his hands. It showed information about humans. They were young, so very young. Only 200 years ago, they had been trapped on one planet, fighting among themselves. Now they had colonies on 12 worlds. They had asked to join the Galactic Council 3 times. 3 times they had been refused. Too aggressive, the Council had said. Too violent. Too unpredictable. But when the Krathi Empire had attacked human colonies, burning 3 settlements to ash, the humans had declared war. No negotiations, no calls for help, just war. The Council had been surprised. Most species begged for help when the Krathi attacked. The Krathi were strong. They had conquered 40% of known space. Their weapons were advanced. Their soldiers were brutal. They did not take prisoners. But the humans had not begged. They had armed themselves and prepared to fight. Velthor's assignment was clear. Go to the human fleet, watch their battles, and document their defeat. The Council wanted to know how quickly the Krathi would crush them. They wanted to know if humanity could be controlled afterward. They wanted to know if humans would become useful servants to the Krathi or if they would be wiped out completely. The door behind him opened. Velthor turned to see 3 figures enter the observation chamber. 2 were council members, tall beings wrapped in energy fields. The third was human. The human was shorter than Velthor, wearing a dark blue uniform with silver markings. His face was smooth, his black hair cut short. His eyes were dark and calm. He looked at Velthor without fear or anger, just awareness. "Observer Velthor," one of the council members said, their voice humming through their energy field. "This is Admiral Day Quan of the human fleet. He will provide you passage to the battle zone." Velthor bowed his head slightly. "Admiral, I am ready to begin my observation." Day Quan studied him for a moment. "You're here to watch us die." It was not a question. Velthor decided honesty was appropriate. "The Council believes your species will be defeated. I am here to record how it happens." Something changed in Day Quan's eyes. Not anger, something else. Something Velthor could not identify. The Admiral nodded slowly. "Then you'll have a good view. My ship leaves in 2 hours." The council members departed quickly as if they did not want to spend time near the human. Day Quan remained. He walked to the observation window and looked out at the stars. "Have you ever seen war, observer?" he asked. "I have documented 17 conflicts," Velthor replied. "I have witnessed the fall of 6 civilizations. But have you seen war?" Day Quan turned to face him. "Not just recorded it, seen it, felt it, understood it." Velthor's antenna twitched in confusion. "I do not understand the distinction." "You will." Day Quan walked toward the door, then paused. "Bring everything you need to document. This will be worth remembering." 2 hours later, Velthor found himself aboard a human ship called the Indomitable. It was larger than he had expected, but crude compared to council vessels. The corridors were plain metal. The lights were harsh. Everything looked functional, nothing decorative. Humans moved through the corridors with purpose. They did not stop to stare at him, though he was clearly alien to them. They had work to do. A human female met him near his assigned quarters. She wore white clothing marked with a red cross symbol. Her black hair was pulled back, and her face showed signs of exhaustion. "Observer Velthor, I'm Dr. Yuna Che. I run the medical division on this ship. She extended her hand. Velthor had studied human gestures. He reached out with one of his limbs and touched her hand briefly. Her skin was warm. "Doctor, I did not expect a medical officer to greet me. The Admiral asked me to check on you, make sure your quarters have what you need." She smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. "Also, I wanted to meet you. You'll be writing about us, about what happens next." "I will record events accurately," Velthor said. "Good." Yuna looked down the corridor where medical personnel were moving equipment. "Then make sure you record this. We didn't start this war. The Krathi burned our colonies. They killed 15,000 civilians, children, families, people who had never hurt anyone." Her voice was steady, but Velthor could detect something beneath it. Emotion. Strong emotion. "War is common in the galaxy," Velthor said. "Species fight. Some win, some lose." "Maybe," Yuna met his eyes. "But humans remember. We don't forget who started it, and we don't stop until it's finished." She left him then, returning to her work. Velthor entered his quarters and began setting up his recording equipment. Through the wall, he could hear the ship's engines building power. They were preparing to jump to the Helios 7 system, where Krathi forces had surrounded a human colony. Velthor activated his primary recording device and spoke into it. "Day 1. I have boarded the human carrier ship, Indomitable. The crew appears organized but tense. Admiral Daquan shows no signs of fear, which is either courage or foolishness. Initial assessment: humans are confident beyond their capabilities. Predicted outcome: defeat within 3 engagements." He paused, thinking about Daquan's question. "Have you seen war?" Velthor had documented 17 conflicts. He had watched species rise and fall. He had recorded the last words of dying civilizations, but he had always done so from a distance, safe, neutral, uninvolved. This felt different. He was on a human ship, surrounded by humans, going into a battle the humans could not win. For the first time in his career, Velthor wondered if observation would be enough. The ship shuddered as the jump drives engaged. Through his window, the stars stretched and blurred. They were leaving Council space. They were entering the war zone. Velthor settled into his observation position and waited. Soon he would see what happened when humans went to war. Soon he would understand why the Council feared them. Soon he would learn why the galaxy would come to tremble at their name. But for now he could only watch and record. That was his purpose. That was all he knew how to do. The Indomitable jumped through space, carrying him toward answers he did not yet know he was seeking. The Helios 7 system appeared on the view screen like a painting of fire. 3 human colony stations orbited the planet, all of them surrounded by Krathi warships. Velthor counted 28 enemy vessels. The human fleet had only 15. "They're outnumbered," Velthor said to himself, his recording device capturing every word. Standard tactical analysis suggests retreat. But the human fleet did not retreat. They moved forward. Admiral Daquan stood on the bridge, his hands behind his back, watching the enemy formation. Around him, human crew members worked at their stations. No one spoke unnecessarily. No one showed panic. "Commander Hyun Park, begin broadcast," Daquan said quietly. A younger officer, a man with sharp features and steady hands, nodded. "Broadcasting now, Admiral." Velthor moved closer, his curiosity active. Broadcasting? During an approach to battle? This was not standard procedure. Through the ship's speakers, he heard a human voice speaking in Krathi language. The accent was rough but understandable. The voice was reading something, a story, a historical account. "What is this?" Velthor asked. Hyun Park glanced at him. "History lesson. We're telling them about the Battle of Stalingrad, winter of 1942 on Earth. 1 million soldiers dead in 5 months. We're explaining how humans fought in ruined cities, eating rats to survive, freezing to death in trenches, but never surrendering. Velthor's antenna twitched in confusion. Why would you tell the enemy this? So they know who they're fighting. Hyun Park returned his attention to his console. The Krathi think we're soft because we're new to space. We're showing them we've been doing this to ourselves for thousands of years. The broadcast continued. It described human wars, the Somme, Verdun, Iwo Jima, places Velthor had never heard of, battles where humans had died by the hundreds of thousands, yet kept fighting. On the view screen, the Krathi fleet began to shift. Their formation became less organized. They were listening. They were understanding. All ships, Daequan's voice was calm. Proceed to assault positions. Remember the protocol. We hold the line at any cost. The human fleet split into groups. Velthor watched as they moved not to attack, but to position themselves between the Krathi and the colony stations. They were protecting the civilians still evacuating below. Admiral, Velthor said, tactical logic suggests attacking the enemy fleet directly. Why protect the colonies? The civilians are already doomed if you lose. Daequan looked at him, really looked at him. We don't abandon our people. Ever. That's the difference between us and them. The Krathi attacked. Their weapons were powerful, streams of plasma that tore through space. The human ships took hits. Shields flared. One destroyer lost power and began to drift. But the humans fired back. Their weapons were simpler, kinetic projectiles and missiles, but they fired with accuracy. More importantly, they fired without hesitation. Velthor watched the battle unfold. It was brutal. It was desperate. But something was wrong with his predictions. The humans were not breaking. They were not retreating. Ships that should have withdrawn stayed in formation. Crews that should have panicked continued fighting. A transmission came through from one of the human frigates. The ship was badly damaged, atmosphere venting from multiple holes. The captain's voice was strained but clear. Indomitable. This is Captain Ari's song of the Retribution. We've lost engines and weapons. Krathi cruiser closing on our position. Velthor expected orders to evacuate. Instead, Daequan asked, Can you maneuver? Thrusters only, sir. Then use them. Ram that cruiser. Aim for their bridge. There was a pause. Then Captain Ari Song laughed. Actually laughed. Yes, sir. It's been an honor. Velthor watched in shock as the damaged frigate turned and accelerated on thrusters alone, driving itself directly into the Krathi cruiser. Both ships exploded in a ball of fire. She killed herself, Velthor said, his voice barely functioning. You ordered her to die. I ordered her to take an enemy ship with her, Daequan corrected. She volunteered. They all volunteer. The battle continued for 6 hours. Velthor recorded everything, but his analytical mind struggled to process what he was seeing. Humans fighting with injuries that should have incapacitated them. Humans continuing to fire weapons even as their ships were torn apart. Humans singing, actually singing as they went into battle. When the Indomitable took a direct hit to the lower decks, Velthor felt the ship shudder. Alarms blared. He rushed to follow the damage control teams, his recording equipment active. He found Dr. Yuna Che in a medical bay that had been partially destroyed. The ceiling was collapsed on one side. Sparks flew from broken conduits, and she was operating on a wounded soldier, her hands steady despite the chaos. Doctor, Velthor said, this area is not safe. You must evacuate. Can't, she said, not looking up from her work. This man will die if I stop. You will die if the hull breaches. Maybe. She continued working, her hands moving with precision. But he'll definitely die if I leave. So I'm staying. The wounded soldier on her table was young. His leg was shattered, bones visible through torn flesh. But his eyes were open, and he was conscious. Hey, observer, the soldier said, his voice tight with pain. You getting all this? You recording? Velthor moved closer. Yes, I am recording. What is your name? Private Tai Lim. The soldier tried to smile. Make sure you spell it right in your report. You are badly injured, Velthor observed. You require evacuation to a proper medical facility. No time for that. Tai Lim gritted his teeth as Yuna worked on his leg. Battle's still going. They need every gun firing. Doc's gonna patch me up and I'm going back to my station. That is irrational. You cannot fight in this condition. Tai Lim's smile faded. His eyes became hard. Watch me. Yuna finished her work quickly, injecting something into Tai Lim's arm. That'll hold for a few hours. After that, you're coming back here whether you like it or not. Yes, ma'am. Tai Lim stood, stumbling slightly. He grabbed a weapon from the wall and limped toward the exit. Velthor watched him go. He will die. Probably, Yuna agreed, already moving to the next wounded soldier. But he'll die fighting. That matters to us. Above them, the battle reached its peak. The Krathi had focused their fire on the human flagship, trying to kill Admiral Daquan. The Indomitable was burning. Half its weapons were offline, but it did not retreat. On the bridge, Hyun Park coordinated the remaining ships with calm efficiency. All vessels, concentrate fire on the Krathi command ship. All power to forward weapons. Sir, that will leave us defenseless, an officer reported. I know. Do it anyway. The human fleet obeyed. Every ship turned its weapons on one target. The Krathi command ship took massive damage. Its shields collapsed, its hull ruptured, and then something unexpected happened. The Krathi fleet began to retreat. Velthor could not believe what he was seeing. The Krathi had superior numbers. They had better technology. They were winning, but they were retreating. Why? He asked Daquan. They had not yet been defeated. Daquan watched the enemy ships withdraw, his expression unchanged. They weren't retreating because they were losing. They were retreating because they realized we weren't going to stop. They could kill every ship in our fleet and we'd still be fighting. They've never faced an enemy like that before. Velthor looked around the bridge. Every human present was wounded in some way. Burns, cuts, bruises. Some could barely stand, but they remained at their stations. This is not logical, Velthor said. You sacrificed so much for so little gain. We saved the colonies, Hyun Park said, leaning heavily on his console. 15,000 civilians evacuated safely. That's not little gain. That's everything. In the medical bay, Yuna had been working for 12 hours straight. Velthor found her sitting on the floor, her back against the wall, her hands covered in blood. She was crying silently, tears running down her face. But when the next wounded soldier was brought in, she stood up and went back to work. Velthor returned to his quarters and reviewed his recordings. He had documented everything, the tactics, the casualties, the battles. But he realized he had not truly understood what he had witnessed. He began his report to the council. Day 7, first major engagement concluded. Human forces technically victorious, though at severe cost. They lost 4 ships and 2,000 personnel, but they saved their civilians. He paused, considering his next words carefully. Initial assessment was incorrect. Humans do not fight logically. They fight emotionally. They remember what they are protecting. They remember who they are fighting for. This makes them unpredictable. This makes them dangerous. Velthor saved the report and looked out his window at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Krathi were regrouping. They would attack again, and the humans would be waiting, wounded, exhausted, but absolutely unwilling to surrender. For the first time in his long career, Velthor wondered if he was observing the wrong side's defeat. 3 weeks after the Battle of Helios 7, Velthor sat in a strategy meeting that would change his understanding of warfare forever. The conference room aboard the Indomitable was simple and functional. A large table dominated the center, with a holographic display showing the Krathi Empire's territory. Around the table sat 15 human officers, including Admiral Dae Kwan, Commander Hyun Park, and several ship captains. Velthor stood in the corner, recording as always. He had been granted access to these meetings as part of his observation duties. The Council wanted to know how humans planned their battles. They were about to find out. "The target is here," Dae Kwan said, pointing to a location deep in Krathi space. The hologram zoomed in to show a massive shipyard, protected by defensive platforms and a fleet of 40 warships. "The Krathi are building their next invasion force. Intelligence says they'll have 60 new ships operational within 2 months. "We can't let that happen," said a woman Velthor recognized as Captain Ari Song. She had survived her earlier battle, though her ship had not. She now commanded the destroyer Retribution 2. "Agreed," Dae Kwan said. "We hit the shipyard now, before they can complete construction." Hyun Park activated additional data. Numbers appeared beside the hologram. Velthor read them with growing concern. Enemy ships, 40. Human ships available, 25. Defensive platforms, 12. Estimated casualties, 60%. "These numbers," Velthor said before he could stop himself. "This mission is suicide." Every human in the room turned to look at him. No one seemed angry at the interruption. They seemed curious. "Explain your reasoning, observer," Dae Kwan said. Velthor gestured to the hologram. "You are outnumbered. The Krathi have defensive advantages. You will lose at least 15 ships, possibly more. Thousands of your people will die. The strategic gain does not justify the cost." "What would you suggest instead?" asked a young officer. "Withdraw. Defend your existing territory. Wait for the Krathi to overextend themselves. Fight defensively until they make a mistake." The room was quiet for a moment. Then Captain Ari Song spoke. "That's logical. It makes sense from a pure numbers perspective." "Then you agree?" Velthor felt a small sense of relief. "No." Ari Song stood and walked to the hologram. "Because you're forgetting something. If we wait, they build 60 more ships. Then they attack our colonies again. They kill our people, our families, our children. We're not fighting for territory, observer. We're fighting for survival." "But the casualties are acceptable," Dae Kwan said firmly. "Not desired, not wanted, but acceptable." Velthor's antenna twitched in confusion. "I do not understand this reasoning." Dae Kwan stood and walked around the table until he was standing directly in front of Velthor. "Let me explain something about humans. We don't calculate acceptable losses for victory. We calculate acceptable losses for survival. And we've decided our species' survival is worth any price." He turned back to the assembled officers. "The mission is dangerous. The casualties will be heavy. Anyone who wants to withdraw from the assault can do so without any consequences. You have 10 seconds to decide." Velthor waited. Surely some would choose to live. Surely some would see the logic in preservation. Not a single officer moved. Not one. Captain Ari Song smiled. "Sir, my crew already voted. We want to lead the assault." "My ship volunteers for the close-range attack," said another captain. "We'll take the southern approach," said a third. One by one, every officer volunteered their ship and crew for the most dangerous positions. They were not just accepting death. They were competing for it. Velthor felt something he had not experienced in centuries. Fear. Not for himself, but of what he was witnessing. These beings were not rational. They were something else entirely. "Then it's settled," Dae Kwan said. "We move in 3 days. Prepare your crews." The meeting ended, but Velthor followed Dae Kwan to his private office. He had to understand. "Admiral, may I speak with you?" Dae Kwan looked tired. The war was aging him. "Of course, observer." "Why?" Velthor asked simply. Why sacrifice so many for so little? Daquan poured himself a drink from a bottle on his desk. He did not offer one to Velthor. Have you ever had a family observer? My species does not form emotional bonds in the way humans do. Then you'll never truly understand. Daquan drank. I had a daughter. Her name was Hannah. She was 6 years old. She loved drawing pictures of stars. He set down the glass. She was on one of the colonies the Krathi burned. I saw the records. The Krathi didn't just attack military targets. They targeted schools, hospitals, residential areas. They wanted to terrify us into submission. I am sorry for your loss, Velthor said, using a phrase he had learned from humans. So am I. Daquan's voice was steady, but his eyes were hard. But sorrow doesn't win wars. Determination does. Every human in this fleet has lost someone, family, friends, people they loved. We're not fighting for abstract concepts. We're fighting so no more children die for someone else's empire. 3 days later, the human fleet jumped into Krathi space. Velthor watched from the Indomitable's observation deck as the enemy shipyard appeared on the screens. It was massive, a structure of metal and energy that dwarfed any human vessel. All ships, this is Admiral Daquan. You know the mission, you know the cost, and you know why we're here. He paused. For those we lost, for those we'll save, for humanity. The fleet moved forward. The Krathi defenders activated immediately. Plasma fire filled the space between the fleets. The first human ship to fall was the destroyer Morning Star. It exploded in seconds, but the rest pressed on. Velthor had studied hundreds of battles. He had never seen anything like this. Human ships deliberately positioned themselves to draw enemy fire away from others. Damaged vessels continued attacking instead of retreating. Crews sang battle songs over open channels. Captain Arisong's ship, the Retribution II, led the first wave. Her voice came through the communications. This is for everyone we lost. This is for everyone we'll save. Forward! Her ship took massive damage almost immediately, but she turned directly toward the nearest Krathi battleship and accelerated. She's ramming, Hyun Park reported from his station, his voice tense. Velthor watched in horror and fascination as the Retribution II crashed into the Krathi vessel at full speed. Both ships erupted in fire. Over 300 humans died in an instant, but they took down a ship that would have killed thousands more. The battle became chaos. Human boarding pods launched from damaged ships, crashing into Krathi vessels. Marines fought deck by deck, room by room. Velthor heard transmissions of humans singing as they fought. Old songs, war songs from Earth. Sergeant Nari Bayek led one boarding party. Her voice came through clearly. We go in singing, we come out victorious, or we don't come out at all. Her squad breached a Krathi ship and fought through its corridors. Velthor listened to the sounds of combat, explosions, weapons fire, screams, and through it all, humans singing. The battle lasted 14 hours. When it ended, the shipyard was destroyed. So were 18 human ships. Over 7,000 humans were dead or missing. But the Krathi invasion fleet would never be built. Velthor found Dr. Yuna Chai in the medical bay 40 hours after the battle ended. She had not stopped working. Her eyes were red from exhaustion and tears. Her hands shook as she treated another wounded soldier. Doctor, Velthor said gently, you must rest. Can't, she whispered. Too many wounded. Not enough doctors. If I stop, people die. You are weeping. I know. She finished bandaging the soldier and moved to the next bed. I cry for every one of them, and I keep working because that's what they need. Velthor watched her work for another hour before she finally collapsed. Other medical staff caught her and took her to rest. She had been awake for 60 hours straight. In his quarters, Velthor prepared his report to the council. His fingers moved slowly over the data pad. How could he explain what he had witnessed? Day 24. Human assault on Krathi shipyard successful. Strategic objective achieved at cost of 18 ships and 7,000 personnel. By all logical analysis, the casualties are too high. The mission should have been avoided. He paused, thinking about Captain Ari Song deliberately ramming her ship into the enemy, about Sergeant Nari Bayek singing as she fought, about Dr. Yuna Chai working until she collapsed. However, he continued typing, humans do not operate on logical analysis alone. They operate on something else, something I do not have words for in my language. They call it purpose. They fight not to win battles, but to ensure their species survives. And for that purpose, they will accept any cost. He added one final note. Council should be advised. Standard calculations for breaking human morale are incorrect. The more humans lose, the more determined they become. This is not a weakness. This is possibly the most dangerous trait any species could possess. Velthor saved the report and looked out at the stars. The human fleet was damaged, exhausted, grieving, but they were preparing for the next battle. Because the Krathi were still out there. And humans, Velthor was learning, did not stop until the fight was finished. He had asked to observe their defeat. Instead, he was beginning to witness something else entirely. He was witnessing why the galaxy would learn to fear them. The war had been going for 6 months when Velthor began noticing changes across the galaxy. He was reviewing intelligence reports in his quarters when he saw it. 3 species that had been allied with the Krathi Empire had withdrawn their support. 2 others had refused to send reinforcements. One had even sent a secret message to the human fleet, offering intelligence about Krathi movements. Why are they abandoning the Krathi? Velthor asked Commander Hyun Park, who was reviewing the same reports on the bridge. Hyun Park smiled grimly. Because they're scared. Not of the Krathi anymore, of us. That makes no sense. The Krathi are winning most battles. They have more ships, more territory, more resources. But they're paying a price they never expected. Hyun Park pulled up casualty reports. For every human ship they destroy, they lose 2 of their own. For every colony they attack, we burn 3 of their supply depots. They're learning what we already knew. What is that? Fighting humans costs more than victory is worth. News spread through the galaxy quickly. Stories of human tactics became legends. Some were exaggerated, some were understated. But all of them had one thing in common. They made other species nervous. The Council sent Velthor urgent messages. They wanted detailed reports. They wanted to understand how a species so young, so small, was holding back the Krathi Empire. Velthor gave them facts, but facts did not explain what he was seeing. He watched as human engineers, led by a brilliant technician named Wu Jin, turned damaged ships into weapons. They would strip everything valuable from destroyed vessels, then fill the hulls with explosives and send them on automated courses toward Krathi formations. It's wasteful, Velthor observed as he watched Wu Jin work on another ship conversion. It's efficient, Wu Jin replied, not looking up from his welding. This ship was going to be scrapped anyway. Now it'll take out a Krathi cruiser. That's a good trade. You are destroying your own vessels. We're using every resource we have. Wu Jin finished his weld and moved to the next section. The Krathi have more ships than us, so we make sure every ship counts, even the dead ones. Velthor documented it all. The improvised weapons, the desperate tactics, the constant adaptation. Humans learned faster than any species he had ever observed. They would study Krathi technology from destroyed ships and replicate it within weeks. They would analyze enemy tactics from one battle and counter them in the next. But the Krathi were not finished. They had been embarrassed by human resistance. Now they were angry. Word reached the Indomitable that the Krathi had mobilized their elite forces. The Death Guard, their most feared warriors, were being sent to crush humanity once and for all. 60 of the most advanced Krathi warships, commanded by their best officers, were assembling at the Kryn Nebula. "They're coming with everything they have," Admiral Day Kwan said during the strategy meeting. The hologram showed the enemy fleet. It was enormous. "We can field 25 ships," Hyun Park reported. "We're outnumbered more than 2-1. Velthor expected orders to retreat, to regroup, to find better odds. Instead, Daequan said, "We meet them at the Kryn Nebula. We end this." "Admiral," Velthor spoke up, "this is beyond acceptable losses. This is annihilation." "Maybe." Daequan studied the hologram. "But if we let them gather unopposed, they'll be unstoppable. We fight them now while we still can." He turned to his officers. "Contact every ship. Tell the crews what we're facing. Anyone who wants to withdraw has permission. No questions asked." An hour later, Hyun Park reported the results. "Sir, no one withdrew. In fact, we received volunteer requests from 3 merchant ships asking to be armed and included in the fleet." Daequan nodded slowly. "Then we all understand what's at stake." The human fleet jumped to the Kryn Nebula 3 days later. The nebula itself was beautiful, clouds of colored gas and stellar dust that glowed in the light of nearby stars. It would have been peaceful if not for the Krathi fleet waiting on the other side. Velthor watched from the observation deck as both fleets faced each other. The size difference was staggering. The Krathi ships were larger, more advanced, more numerous. "Fleet Commander Mirai Ko has tactical command," Hyun Park explained to Velthor. "She's one of our best." On the main screen, a woman appeared. She was young, maybe 30 human years. Her hair was tied back. Her face was serious. She looked at the camera as if she could see through it to every ship in the fleet. "This is Commander Mirai Ko to all human vessels. You know what we're facing. You know the odds. I'm not going to pretend this will be easy. I'm not going to promise we'll all make it home." She paused. When she spoke again, her voice was firm. "But I can promise this. We'll make them pay for every meter of space. We'll make them remember this day. And we'll show them that humans don't surrender, don't break, and don't stop fighting until we've won or we're dead." Another pause. Then, "Disable all reactor safety limiters. Reroute emergency power to weapons. If we're dying today, we're taking as many of them with us as possible." Velthor felt something cold in his chest. "She's removing safety systems? That could cause reactor failures, ship explosions." "I know," Hyun Park said quietly. "That's the point. If a ship is going down anyway, at least it goes down fighting." The Krathi attacked first. Their formation was perfect. Their weapons fire was coordinated. They had superior numbers, superior technology, and superior position. But they had never fought humans before. Not like this. The human fleet did not try to match them in formation. They did not attempt conventional tactics. Instead, they did something the Krathi had never seen. They charged. 25 human ships accelerated directly into the Krathi formation at maximum speed, their weapons firing continuously. They broke the enemy line through sheer audacity. "This is madness," Velthor whispered, recording everything. "This is human," Hyun Park replied. The battle became a close-range brawl. Ships passed within meters of each other, exchanging fire at point-blank range. Velthor watched as a human cruiser, badly damaged and losing atmosphere, turned and rammed a Krathi battleship. Both exploded. "Ship down," an officer reported. "The horizon is destroyed." "Confirmed kill on Krathi battleship," another officer added. "They traded," Velthor said, understanding. "1 for 1. "Better than 1 for nothing," Hyun Park said grimly. The battle raged for hours. The Krathi were skilled and powerful, but they were also cautious. They valued their ships. They calculated risks. They tried to minimize casualties. Humans did none of those things. They fought like every ship was already lost, so they might as well use them as weapons. They rammed enemy vessels. They set their reactors to overload and crashed into Krathi formations. They sang war songs over open channels as they died. Velthor watched in amazement as the impossible happened. The Krathi fleet began to fall back, not because they were losing, they still had numerical superiority, but because the cost had become too high. For every human ship destroyed, the Krathi lost 2, sometimes 3. "They're retreating," an officer said, disbelief in his voice. "Press the attack," Commander Mireko ordered. "Don't let them regroup." The human fleet pursued. Damaged ships that should have withdrawn kept fighting. Crews that should have been dead kept firing. The Krathi retreat became a rout. When it was over, the human fleet had lost 13 ships, more than half their force, over 6,000 dead. But the Krathi Death Guard, the elite force that was supposed to crush humanity, had lost 45 ships and fled in disorder. In the aftermath, Velthor walked through the Indomitable. The ship had taken heavy damage. Entire sections were vented to space. The medical bay was overwhelmed. Dr. Unichai was operating with a broken arm, refusing to stop until all the wounded were treated. Velthor found Admiral Day Quan on the bridge. The Admiral was looking at the casualty lists. His face showed nothing, but Velthor had learned to read human body language. The tension in his shoulders, the tightness around his eyes. 6,000 dead, Velthor said. Was it worth it? Day Quan did not look at him. Ask the colonies they would have attacked. Ask the families who won't be burned alive. Ask the children who will grow up instead of dying. The Krathi will recover. They will attack again. Maybe. But next time they'll remember this. They'll remember that fighting humans means watching their own ships burn. They'll remember that we don't stop. We don't surrender. We just keep coming until the fight is over. Reports began arriving from across the galaxy. The news of the Kryn Nebula battle spread quickly. The Krathi Empire had been dealt a devastating blow. More importantly, other species were watching. Velthor received a message from the Council. They wanted him to return and report in person. He sent back a simple reply. I will return when the war ends, not before. He had started this assignment expecting to document humanity's defeat. Now he could not look away. Because something was changing in the galaxy. Fear was spreading, not fear of the Krathi, fear of humans. 3 more species withdrew their support from the Krathi Empire. 2 declared neutrality. 1 sent a formal apology to humanity for previous hostilities. The Krathi were powerful. They had conquered 40% of known space. They had technology and numbers on their side. But humans had something the Krathi did not understand and could not defeat. They had the absolute, unshakable will to survive, and they had proven they would pay any price, accept any loss, and endure any horror to protect their own. Velthor updated his reports. Day 187. Major engagement at Kryn Nebula. Human casualties severe but strategic victory achieved. Krathi elite forces defeated. He paused, then added, Council must understand. Humanity is not fighting a conventional war. They are fighting an existential war. Every battle is life or death to them. Every loss strengthens their resolve rather than weakens it. They have taught the galaxy a new lesson. Attacking humans is costly. Defeating them may be impossible. Outside his window, the damaged human fleet was already repairing itself, already preparing for the next battle, because the war was not over. Not yet. But for the first time, Velthor wondered if he was watching the beginning of the Krathi Empire's end. 1 year after the war began, the human fleet arrived at the Krathi homeworld. Velthor stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching the planet grow larger on the view screen. It was a beautiful world, blue and green, with 3 moons orbiting in perfect formation. Millions of Krathi lived on its surface, billions more throughout the system. The human fleet had shrunk. Of the original 50 ships that had started the war, only 20 remained. But they had been joined by new vessels, built in human shipyards from salvaged materials and desperate innovation. The fleet now numbered 35 ships. Behind them, scattered across space, were the ruins of the Krathi Empire, 60 systems liberated, 40 shipyards destroyed, hundreds of thousands of Krathi soldiers dead or captured, and ahead of them, the Krathi homeworld, the heart of the Empire. "Admiral," Commander Hyun Park said from his station, "we're receiving a transmission. It's from the Galactic Council." Admiral Dae Kwan's expression did not change. "Put it through." The view screen changed to show 3 council members, their energy forms flickering with agitation. "Admiral Dae Kwan, this is an official order from the Galactic Council. You must cease your advance immediately. The Krathi government has offered terms for peace. They are willing to withdraw from human space, return all prisoners, and pay reparations." Dae Kwan was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was calm. "And what about the species they conquered before us? What about the worlds they burned? What about the civilians they murdered?" "That is not your concern," one council member said. "You have achieved your military objectives. Your species is safe. Continuing this attack violates galactic warfare conventions." "We never signed your conventions," Dae Kwan replied. "And our objective isn't safety. It's justice." "Admiral, please." Dae Kwan cut the transmission. Velthor moved forward. In the year he had spent with humans, he had learned when to speak and when to stay silent. This was a time to speak. "Admiral, the Council is correct. You have won. The Krathi are offering everything you demanded. Why continue?" Dae Kwan turned to face him. The Admiral looked older than when Velthor had first met him. The war had aged him, but his eyes were still hard, still determined. "Because they invaded our colonies. They killed our children. They started this war thinking we were weak, thinking we would surrender. They need to learn that humans don't forget. We don't forgive. And we finish what others start. But the civilian casualties will be minimal if they surrender. We're not here to murder civilians, Velthor. We're here to end the Krathi Empire's ability to wage war. Forever." The fleet moved forward. The Krathi defenders activated, hundreds of defense platforms, dozens of ships, the last remnants of their military power. Before the battle began, Dr. Yuna Chai made a broadcast. It went out on all channels, in all languages. Velthor recorded every word. "This is Dr. Yuna Chai of the Human Fleet, broadcasting to all Krathi civilians. We are not here to kill you. We are not here to destroy your world. We are here to end your empire's ability to harm others." Her voice was steady but carried emotion. "If you surrender, you will be treated fairly. Your wounded will be healed. Your families will be protected. We will help you rebuild. But if you resist, if your military continues to fight, there will be consequences." She paused. "We did not want this war, but we will finish it. Choose wisely." The Krathi military chose to fight. Their defense platforms opened fire. Their ships attacked. They had nothing left to lose. The battle for the Krathi homeworld lasted 2 days. It was brutal. It was desperate. But it was not like the previous battles. The humans fought with precision now. They had learned. They had adapted. They moved like veterans instead of desperate survivors. Commander Mirai Ko coordinated the fleet with brilliant efficiency. She used the moons as cover. She exploited weaknesses in Krathi formations. She sacrificed damaged ships, not out of desperation, but as calculated tactics. Velthor watched as the Krathi defenses fell, one by one. The humans did not celebrate. They did not gloat. They just continued fighting until the job was done. When the last Krathi defense platform fell silent, Admiral Dae Kwan sent a message to the planet's surface. "This is Admiral Dae Kwan to the Krathi government. Your military is defeated. Your empire is ended. Surrender unconditionally, or we will continue." There was a long silence. Then a response came. The Krathi Premier, his voice heavy with defeat, spoke. "We surrender, unconditionally. We ask only for mercy for our civilians." "You will have it," Daquan said. "We are not conquerors. We are not murderers. But we are done being victims." The war ended not with a grand battle, but with a simple transmission. The Krathi Empire, which had conquered 40% of known space, which had subjugated dozens of species, which had been considered unstoppable, surrendered to a species that had been in space for only 200 years. Velthor watched as human marines landed on the Krathi homeworld. He expected brutality, expected revenge, expected humans to unleash their fury on the species that had hurt them so badly. Instead, he saw something else. Human medics treating Krathi wounded. Human engineers repairing damaged infrastructure. Human soldiers protecting Krathi civilians from their own military leaders who wanted to continue fighting. Dr. Yuna Chai set up field hospitals on the surface. Velthor found her there, treating Krathi children who had been injured in the fighting. "Why?" he asked her. "Why help them after everything they did to you?" Yuna did not look up from her work. "Because the war is over. These children didn't choose to attack us. They didn't burn our colonies. They're just children. And I'm a doctor. I help people." She finished bandaging a young Krathi and moved to the next. "We fought to survive. We won. Now we show them what humans do after the fighting stops. We rebuild, we heal, we remember, but we don't become monsters." Velthor spent the next month documenting the aftermath. He watched as humans and Krathi worked together to restore order. He saw human soldiers teaching Krathi civilians how to rebuild their damaged cities. He observed Admiral Daquan meeting with Krathi leaders, not as conquerors, but as equals, discussing how to prevent future wars. One day, he stood with Daquan at a memorial being constructed. It was for the human dead. Thousands of names carved into stone. Thousands of trees being planted, one for each fallen soldier. "Why trees?" Velthor asked. "Because trees grow," Daquan said simply. "They live. They provide oxygen, shade, life. Our people died, but life continues. That's what they fought for." Velthor looked at the Admiral. "I was sent to document your defeat. I expected to record your destruction. Instead, I witnessed something I did not think possible." "What's that?" "A species that fights not with hate, but with love. Love for their own people. Love for life itself. You are terrifying in war because you care so deeply about peace." Daquan nodded slowly. "That's the thing about humans, Velthor. We're not natural warriors. We're builders, dreamers, explorers. But when you threaten what we love, when you hurt our families, when you try to destroy us," he paused, "then we become something else, something dangerous, something unstoppable." "The galaxy fears you now," Velthor said. "Good. Fear will prevent the next war. Fear will keep others from making the same mistake the Krathi made." A month later, Velthor returned to the Galactic Council station. He carried with him recordings of everything he had witnessed, every battle, every death, every moment of human determination. The Council assembled to hear his report. Energy beings from across the galaxy gathered in the chamber, waiting to understand what had happened. Velthor stood before them and began his final report. "For 1 year, I observed humanity at war. I documented their tactics, their casualties, their victories and defeats. I was sent to record their destruction. Instead, I witnessed the birth of something the galaxy has not seen in millennia." He activated the holographic displays, showing battles, showing human ships burning, showing soldiers fighting and dying. Humans do not fight for territory. They do not fight for resources. They do not fight for glory. They fight for survival. And when fighting for survival, they recognize no limits, accept no defeat, and stop for nothing. The images shifted to show human medics treating wounded, engineers rebuilding, families mourning their dead. But they are not monsters. They are not conquerors. When the fighting ends, they become something else. They become healers, builders. They remember their dead by creating life. Velthor turned to face the council directly. I was asked to determine why the Krathi Empire fell. The answer is simple. They believed humans were weak because they were young. They believed humans would surrender because they lacked experience. They believed humans would break because they had never faced a real threat. He paused, letting his words sink in. They were wrong. Humans have been fighting for their entire existence. War is not new to them. War is their history. And they have learned something from that history. You don't start fights with humans, but if you do, they will finish them. The hologram showed the final image. The Krathi homeworld, intact, with humans and Krathi working together to rebuild. My final recommendation to the Council: do not provoke humanity. They do not seek war, but once committed, they will endure any horror, pay any cost, and break any rule to protect their own. This is not a species that fights to win. This is a species that fights to survive, and survival recognizes no limits. Velthor deactivated the displays. The galaxy trembles at their name not because of their weapons, not because of their numbers, but because of their will. And will, I have learned, is the most powerful force in the universe. The council chamber was silent. Finally, one council member spoke. What do you recommend we do about them? Velthor's answer was simple. Welcome them, include them, learn from them, because humanity is not going away, and making them enemies would be the greatest mistake the galaxy could make. Later, Velthor returned to his quarters and prepared his personal notes. These would not go to the council. These were his own observations. I came to observe aliens, he wrote. I found something else. I found a species that loves so deeply they will fight to the death to protect it. I found warriors who weep for their enemies. I found soldiers who plant trees for their dead. He paused, considering his final words. I saw humans advance into war, and I realized why the galaxy trembles at their name, not because they are strong, not because they are cruel, but because they are human. And being human means never giving up, never surrendering, and never forgetting what you're fighting for. Velthor looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the human fleet was returning home, battered, exhausted, but victorious. And the galaxy would remember, the galaxy would tremble, because humanity had taught them all a lesson. Some species fight to conquer. Others fight to survive, and those who fight to survive will always, eventually, win. The war was over. The Krathi Empire was ended, and humanity had earned its place among the stars, not through conquest, through will, through sacrifice, through love, through being human.